Last week we started looking at introduction to the Visual Basic of VB.NET programming language. And today we'll go further with it to look at the programming constructs, and also to look at some basic elements in VB.NET. Okay, because these are, like I said from last week, the concepts, okay, um, like I said from last week, the syntax is different, but the concept and then the logic are the same. Okay, the concept and logic are the same. However, the syntax is different. So we are going to look at more of the syntax today, and then I'll try to relate it with the other two programming languages that we've done so far. So, all right. So, like I said from last week, I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So last week I said that we're going to use the Visual Studio, okay, IDE to run our program. Okay. Hopefully next week when we meet for the face-to-face, we'll start with the practical session. So I just want to use today's meeting to go through a few stuff, theoretical stuff, especially with the syntax. So for every VB.NET program, it has or it consists of the following parts. There's what we call the namespace declaration. Okay, I believe this word is familiar, namespace from C++. Okay, so the same in, or it's performing the same functionality when it comes to VB.NET. So there's the namespace declaration, and sometimes it's optional. Okay, then just like in C++, it's optional. So if you intend to use certain key syntax, that is when you introduce the namespace. Then we also have the class or the model. Okay, so ideally from Java and C++, we know of the word class. Okay, and it's the same as in VB.NET when you see the word model. The model is also, or it also works or functions like a class. Then we have your VB.NET program should have one or more procedures. One or more procedures. What are these procedures? Procedures are the same as functions. Okay, functions. Procedures are the same as when you say functions. Okay, so that means that every VB.NET program should have one or more function, just like we saw with C++. C++ has what we call the main function, okay, or the main, yes, the main function. In Java, we also saw the public static void main, which is also a main function or a main method. Okay. Similarly, in VB.NET, we also have that main, we call it the sub main. Okay. So the sub main. So it's a procedure. Okay. Then you can have more. The more here has to do with the user defined procedures or the user defined functions or subs. Then we have variables. We've talked about variables so many times. You know, variables are mainly containers to hold or store data. Okay, so there should be variable, then there should be the main procedure, okay, which I just talked about under the one or more procedure. There should be a main procedure, it's a must. Okay. Then your VB.NET statement, program can have statements and expressions. And then it should also have comments. It should also have comments. So I'll open Visual Studio, and then there's a code here. What I'll do is to write it in Visual Studio so that we all see how that works. And then I'll use that to explain some of or more of the concepts, or yes, more of the concepts syntaxes that we have. All right, so I'll create a new project, select Visual Basic, and then select console, okay, the .NET Framework 4.0. So I'll leave it there. And then going to select console application, and then give it a name, maybe, let me say, VB underscore net for example 1. All right, so our interface is open. Okay, you can see there the model and then model 1. Okay, there are times where in declaring or creating your project, you can actually specify the model by its name. Okay, but by default, you see the model 1. Then we have the sub main, which is the main procedure. Okay. The main procedure, that is to say that this is where we are going to be writing our programs. We are going to write our programs inside the sub main. Okay, now after the sub main, we have the end sub, and then we also have end model. Okay, so in VB.NET, instead of introducing curly brackets, okay, instead of introducing your curly brackets for your statement, so in maybe in Java, when you write your static public void main, you introduce your curly brackets, and these curly brackets would mean the beginning and then the end of maybe your main function. Okay, the beginning and the end. But in VB.NET, we are not using curly brackets. Okay, rather, anytime you introduce a particular syntax, okay, so it could be a function, it could be a sub, it could be a class, it could be a model, and so on. It could be an if-else statement, which we'll look at in the course of this course. You always use the end keyword to end that particular construct. So whether it's a sub, a function, or a class, okay, or a model, you end with the end keyword. Okay, so we have end sub, as you can see here, and then we have end model. Okay, now this shows you need this you need this here to be able to collapse or show that you are actually working within your model. In this context, you're actually working within your sub. Okay. So you see the same thing anytime you use the curly brackets in Java or C++. Okay. So I'm going to write a short program here, and then we'll look at what it's about. So I'll first start with the single quote, okay, just a single quote, and I'll put this program will display hello VB.NET class. Now, what I've done over here is a comment. Okay, this is a comment. Now you write or you introduce your comment with with a single quote. Okay, just the opening quote without the closing part. So you don't close it over here. You don't do this. Okay, you just introduce just the single one, the opening part, and then it makes the statement there a comment. For instance, if I do that here, you can see that what it makes the sub main a comment. Okay, so that's how you write your comments in VB.NET. Now, if you want to perform, want to display a statement saying what hello VB.NET class. So how do we perform outputs in VB.NET? We use what we call the console. Mhm. Now, just like Java, anytime you type, it gives you a description of what it does. Okay, so it says the console here represents input, output, and then error, uh, input, output, and then error strings for console application. Okay, so you can see that in this, when we created the project, we created a console application. Okay, so with this, we are going to use the keyword console dot, okay, then we use write line or write, okay. So just as we see in Java, where we use print line or print. Okay, in Java we do what? Print line, that's ln. Okay, these are two key output streams for Java. Okay. However, when we come to VB.NET, we have the write or write line. Okay. So with the write, I'll try and use the two so that you'll see how it works. So with the write, I'll say into brackets, hello. Then we also have the console dot write line. And I'll put here VB.NET class. So this is a simple VB.NET program. Now, after doing this, we just want to output. Okay, so after doing this, what will I do? I'll just run the code. All right. So I ran the code. There's a run option here, start option here for the run. Now, when I ran the code, what happened was that the control screen, that's the terminal screen, popped up immediately and then disappeared. Okay. It popped out with the output but disappeared. It didn't hold on to the screen, or it couldn't stay on the screen. Okay. So there's a code known as the read key, console dot read key. So this is a console dot read key. Now the console dot read key, it says it obtains the next character or function key pressed by the user. Pressed by the user. Okay. Now the press key is displayed in the console window. Now this is the case, the console window is not showing, or it just pops up. Okay, so we want it to remain on the screen after we run our application. So what we do is that at the end of your code, always put the console.read, especially if it's a console application, so that you can see your output. Okay. So once we've done here, or whatever we've done here, we are going to run it. Okay. So now after running it, you can see the output. We cannot see the output. Can we all see it?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it is this read key, console.read key, that is making this window remain open. Okay, if you don't bring it, what will happen is that the screen will just flash. The terminal or the command window will just flash, okay, without you seeing your output. All right, so now who can tell me the difference between the right and then the right line from our output? Right and right line. You can raise your hand. Right and right line. What's the difference? Yes, Angela.
So it seems the right wrote it on the same line, and then the right line wrote it on the like beside it.
Can you repeat it again?
The right, it wrote it on the line, the first line, and then the right line also wrote it right beside it.
Yes, so you are saying that the right display the result on the first line, and then the right line.
Yes, right beside it instead of it going like.
Yeah.
Okay, let me hear from another person. Sarkodie.
Okay, the write all console messages on the next line, and the right line will write the console message on the last console write line. Console write, yeah. So if let's say we are having two console writes, one hello and one hi, the third console, which is console write line, will be on the hi console write.
I'm confused, Sarkodie. I think
Okay, I'm saying
you
I
with the
try.
understand what you are saying, but it's rather confusing.
Can I
okay,
try?
I'm saying the console write.
Elton, if you want to try, kindly raise
Okay,
your hand. If you want to respond, just raise your hand. The person who
so
is named guest, can you rename yourself? Your hand is up.
It's me, Wilson.
So rename yourself.
Okay, I joined with my
Yeah.
machine also.
Yeah. Okay.
So the console.write prints text without moving to a next line afterward.
Okay.
But the console.write line prints the text and then moves the cursor to the next line.
Yeah. Yes. So that was what I was expecting. Okay. So with the console.write, anytime it prints a text, it doesn't move to the next line. Okay. It doesn't move to the next line. So you can see here from here that after printing the hello, the cursor is still on the same line. That has to do with the write. After printing, the cursor remains same line. Okay. But with the write line, it prints, okay, and then moves the cursor to the next line. That is what the write line does. Moves the cursor to the next line. Okay. So if we interchange this code, you realize that if we use the write line for the first line, okay, if we change this to write line, and then we change the second output to just write, what will happen is that it will print hello and then move to the next line and then print vb.net class. Why? Because the write line is coming first. So after printing with the write line, the cursor moves to the next line, okay, to execute that. Just like we learned in Java using the print and print line. And then in C++, we use the end line, ENDL, okay, to perform those same functions. Okay, so please take note of that. All right. So this is a simple VB.NET program, and it's following the basic constructs. So as you can see, we have here the comment, okay, which you can equally add to every part of your application. We have the main procedure. Sorry. Okay, we have the procedure, the main procedure. Okay, and then we end it. Then we have the model here. Okay, and end the model. Then in here we have our statements. We can have our statements and expressions. Statements, okay, in here and expressions. So we have 3 lines of statements in here. Okay. So this program here follows basic or simple Java, VB.NET programming structure. Now, so this is the example. Okay. Now, I omitted this over here. That's the import system. Okay. Now, the import system works when you have some libraries you have to import. Okay, in our context or in this particular example, it automatically or it's the system is automatically importing. Okay, so we don't need to add it again, but there could be other namespaces that will require that we import them into the program. Okay, else it will not be able to run with certain functions. Okay. So this is the namespace, okay, the namespace declaration. Okay, and like I said, the namespace is optional. Okay, as and when you need it, you need to add the namespace library or header file, as and when you need to import that package, then you import it. All right. Now, it says here that the model or classes generally would contain more than one procedure. Procedure contain executable code, just like we saw with the submain. Or in other words, they define the behavior of the class. The procedure could be of the following. It could be a sub, it could be a sub, it could be a function, it could be an operator, it could be a get, it could be a set, it could be an add handler, it could be a remove handler, it could be a raise effect. Okay, these are all events. The add handler, the raise event, these are all event handling concepts with VB.NET. All right, so it says the next line, okay, which is the single quote open with the statement, this program, okay, will be ignored by the compiler. Why? Because it is a comment. Okay, so you can always add a comment to your program. Then we talked about the printing of the files. So then the console.read key. Okay, it said it's used to prevent the screen, that's the console screen, from running and closing quickly when the program is launched. Okay, so you take note of that as well. All right, now let's look at the various or the basic syntax with VB.NET, the basic syntax. So with the basic syntax, we know one of them to be the identifiers. Identifiers are made up of the variable names, the function name, the class name, and many other user-defined items. Okay, so we've learned some of these rules already. Okay, we said that your identifiers must begin with a letter, okay, followed by a sequence of letters and digits, okay, or underscore. The identifier cannot, the first letter of your, or the first character of your identifier should not be digit. It must not contain any of these symbols over here, which are also things to discuss. Okay. And it should not be a reserved word or keyword, or it should not be a reserved keyword. Okay, so what are some of the reserved keywords in VB.NET? They've been listed here. We have add handler, we have Boolean catch, cdec, const, ctype, declare, double, enum, finally. Okay, a whole lot of them. Okay, given over here, showing the the keywords in VB.NET. Okay. Now, one unique thing that's difference, let me put it that way, one unique difference you should take note of when it comes to keywords in VB.NET and keywords in in uh, in VB.NET, in Java and in VB.NET, okay, has to do with the variable, the, the, the first letter of your variable, okay, or the first letter of your keyword, okay. With Java, C++, the keywords are lower cases, okay. However, if you remember from last week, I said that with VB.NET, it is not case sensitive, okay. So mostly writing of your functions, your keyword, and so on, you can use the uppercase. Okay, you can use, actually, you can write it the way you are seeing it here on this table. All right, so let's look at data types in VB.NET. So we know data types are the data that are assigned to a variable in a program, or the type that is assigned to the variable, or the type of the variable or function in your program. Now, data type refers to which type of data or value you are passing to your program. Okay. Now, in declaring a data type, this is the syntax in VB.NET. We use what we call dim. Dim. Okay. Now, dim is a keyword in VB.NET. Okay, or yes, in VB.NET. Now, the dim is a keyword used to declare a variable and specify its data type. Okay, now it's a short word for the word dimension. Dimension, dim, dimension. Okay.
Wait, like that.
Hello, those talking, please mute your microphone. All right. So the dim here simply means dimension. Dimension. Okay. And it's used to declare variables. Declare variables and specify the type of variable it is. Okay. And once it does that, the variable is, or it is also used to assign a memory location to the variable. Okay. So we say dim, D-I-M, then you specify the variable name, and then you say as, dim as, then you specify the data type. Shell, is it in Baloba or what? Please stop writing on the screen. Undo whatever you are writing on the screen. Elliot. Elliot in Balomo. Hello, Elliot. All right, let's go on. So please, those writing on the screen, watch your mouse or your touchpad so that you don't write on the screen. Okay. So we said dim, writing the syntax dim, you dim, then the variable name comes, then the keyword as, then you specify the data type. Okay, so I want to declare maybe, for instance, in Java, we'll say maybe int maybe number. Okay, int or int num. Okay, now in VB.NET, we rather say dim num, where num is the variable name, as then the data type come as integer. Please, are you following?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you write
Yes,
it in this way. So instead of int number, you just say dim the value as an integer. Okay, the variable name, and then your data type. So now let's look at some of the data types and how we write them in VB.NET. So the data types, we have bool, which we all know already, the bool data type. Okay. So the bool data type depends on depends on the implementing platform, okay, which works more with the true or false, okay, value. Then we have the byte data type, we have the char data type, we have the date data type, then there's decimal. Okay, so in VB.NET, instead of using maybe float, okay, there is a data type which is known as the decimal data type, okay, which is used to handle decimal values, and it has its range. Okay. Then we have also the double data type. Okay. Now the double data type takes more or takes less memory than the decimal data type, even though both can take decimal values. Okay. Then we have the integer. Okay, so instead of writing int, you write it in full, integer. Then we have long, we have short, okay, and a few other data types. There's object as well, single, there's string, okay, there's unsigned integer, unsigned long, and there's a user-defined structure as well. All right. So let's, I'd want us to look at this example, okay, next week. Okay, but VB.NET also has what we call the type conversions. Okay, so you can have a variable in maybe a different data type, maybe a byte data type, and then you can use the type conversion functions, which are over here, 16 of them, to convert them to a particular type you want. So if it's an integer, you can convert it into maybe a double, okay, or you can convert it into a character. Okay, so these options are also here. So we have the char bool. That means if you want to convert an expression into a Boolean data type. Then if you want to do the C byte to convert it into you convert it into a byte data type. Then there's the CHAR, CDate, CDBL. Okay, DBL is double. DBL is double. So these are all type conversion functions you can use to convert your expression into the data type of your choice. All right, so let's talk about variables and constants. Variables and constants. Okay, so we know what a variable is. We know a variable is used to store value of specific data type in computer memory. Okay. Now, variables in VB.NET mainly are used, or we use them in declaration, okay? And also we specify or it specifies or determines the size of memory, okay, that will be allocated. So your choice or the variable you use with the data type can determine the memory size and so on. Now, like we said, in declaring your variables, whether it's a class, a model, a structure, a procedure or function, a sub, you would always use the keyword dim. So let's look at some of this, the syntax for declaring variable, okay, which I've already talked about. So the dim is used to declare and allocate space for one or more variable. Then we have the variable name. So the variable name is used or it defines the name of the variable to store the value. Then the as is a keyword that allows you to define the data type in the declaration. And then the data type, as we all know, it allows variable to be stored in that particular type. And then the value of the variable. Okay. So there's another syntax here which describes how you can do more than one declaration in one line. Okay, more than one declaration. So you can see here, within variable one as, then we specify the data type, and then we introduce comma, then variable name 2 as. So these are you declaring 2 or more variables on the same line. Declaring 2 or more variables on the same line. Now, after declaring a variable, we must assign a value to that variable, what we call initialization. Okay, so how do we do that? We just specify the variable name, and then we say equal to, or we assign the value to that variable. So also the same as what we've been learning so far. Okay. Now, how do we accept inputs into the program? How do you accept inputs into the program? Okay. It may seem some rushing through this, but like I said, we are looking at the syntax. Okay, these are concepts that we know already. So I'm just explaining the syntax of those concepts in VB.NET. Okay. Now, in Java, we all know of the system.in and then the use of the scanner, system.in. And then what? We use the scanner to accept inputs. We use the scanner to accept input. Now, when it comes to VB.NET, when you are writing your console program, we use the .read. We use .read. So we use the console.read line, okay, to handle that, okay? So just like we have with the read, with the write line, there's console.read, and then there's console.read line, okay? I know you know the difference between the two, but I want you to go and find out. Then we just use the console.read key, okay? So mainly if you want to accept input, you use the console.read line or read to perform that, okay? So how does it work? You declare a variable, so dim name as string. So you want to take the name of someone, dim name as string. Then you say name equals console.read line. Okay, you can write it like this or without the open and close brackets. Okay, so once you do it this way, it means that your application or your code is ready to accept some inputs. Okay, it's ready to accept some inputs. Okay. So let me just move to the program we just wrote. And then let's try out something quickly, briefly. So we'll say we want to declare a variable name. So dim name as what? String. Because the name is a string. Okay. And then we'll say name equals console dot read line. So over here, I'm going to output dot write. I'm going to output the name. I'm going to output the name. So we are just looking at how to accept inputs, how to output, how to do declaration. So here I'm referencing the name. So you run again. So now that I've run the code, I'm sure it's expecting me to enter a name. So maybe let me just put that statement there and say, enter your name. Enter your name. So you can see from here, okay, enter your name. Enter my name. So you can see here, it says, hello, Aram bb.net class. Okay. So we use the read line to accept inputs, okay, as we've done here. The read line to accept the inputs. Any questions so far? Any question? Yes, Jonas.
Mr. I wanted to know if you can use multiple comments in VBNet, and if that's possible, how do you go about it?
So in writing your multiple comments, you just have to increase or always start the comment with a single quote. That is all.
Okay.
So it doesn't have like in Java or C++ where there's a way by which you can write multiple comments. It's just by the same approach here. It's just by using the single quote.
Okay,
Any
sir,
other? Okay, welcome. Michael, who's that?
So please, I want to ask, with VB.NET, is it
Yeah.
case sensitive, and also termination, is it mandatory to terminate the line?
No, I mentioned all this last week's lecture. And even today, I said VB.NET is not case sensitive. Unlike Java and C++, it is not, and it's not mandatory to terminate. In fact, you don't terminate. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Any other question? Please, do we have any part-timers joining us? If you're part-time, you can acknowledge or you can raise your hand. I'm surprised some people are saying they can't join, even though it's the same link we are all using. Okay, so Bernard and Emmanuel. Emmanuel, are you part-time? Bernard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, please, I'm part-time.
Okay.
Yeah, say I'm part-time.
Okay, all right. Well noted. I just wanted to confirm because your class rep was saying you guys were finding it difficult to join.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so that is it. Let's move on. Now I'll switch to this document. Like I said, it's a free document online. You can download it. Since we are looking at more of the syntax, I'll just switch to this and then go through a few more syntax. Okay, so we need to know more of this syntax before we meet next week. Okay. So in declaring your variable, okay, you can say dim x, okay, as string, dim y as long, and you can also assign the value to it whilst you declare it. Okay. Then we talked about the class and then the model. We'll come to classes. Okay, you come to classes. We'll talk about it into details. Okay, I've talked about comments, the modifiers we'll talk about them in details. Okay, how to initialize. And look at the operators list. Okay. But before we do this, let me just talk about scope declaration. Okay, scope declaration in VB.NET. So scope declaration, the scope of a variable determines how the variable can be accessed at any time of declaration. And VB.NET has three main types of scope. Okay, so it's just has to do with how you do your declaration. Okay, so the first scope is what we call the procedure scope or the local scope, or in other words, what we call the local declaration. Okay, so the local variable or scope is a type of variable defined within the procedure scope. So you define it within your procedure or function. Okay, so the example we did here is an example of a procedure scope, okay, or a local scope, because we are defining it within the sub main. Okay. Then we also have the what is called the model scope. The model scope also is when you declare a scope within the model. Okay, a scope within the model. So usually you use you use modifiers like private. Okay, so private int. Okay, now that will mean that in an example like this, that model will be declared, or sorry, that variable would either be declared in maybe another function outside the main function, but inside the model, or it will be declared, okay, within maybe a sub or another procedure, okay, outside the main model. But you use keywords like private, okay, or access modifiers like private, and so on to declare them. Then we have the global scope, or what is also called the public declaration. Okay, so the global scope or public declaration. Now, this is also declared inside the model. Okay, displayed inside the model, but it is done in such a way that it is public. So, for instance, if I'm doing this dim declaration, I want to do it in here, okay, rather than doing it inside the main the sub main. Okay, you do it here, and once you do it this way, what it means is that you've done a global declaration, okay, or global scope declaration. So that is it. So you can see some example here. Global scope declaration of variable with the use of the keyword public. Okay, you're making it public. That means it can be used inside this programs or inside your sub main. Then we have operators. So VB.NET has different operators. Okay, different operators. Now, these operators are classified into the arithmetic operators. There's the comparison operators. There's the logical operators. There's the bitwise operators. There's the bit shift operators. We have the assignment operators, concatenation operators, and then the miscellaneous operators. Okay. So I'll basically go through a few of them, then we'll continue next week. I have to attend to something urgently, so we'll continue next week. Okay, so the operators, we have the arithmetic operators, we have the caret. The caret is an exponentiation operator. Okay, so if you want to find the power a raised to the power b, you use that operator, or x raised to the power y raised to the power x. Okay. Use this operator. Then we have the addition operator, which is used for addition, subtraction, multiplication. Now there are two main types of division operators. There's a division operator, which is used to divide operands, divide an operand by another operand that returns floating point value. Okay, so that's the forward slash. So if you are going to perform a division which will return a floating point value, a decimal value, you use the forward slash. If you want to perform division which does not, or which will not return a floating value but an integer value, then you use the backslash division. Okay, so take note, VB.NET has two main types of division, the backslash and the forward slash. Then we have the modulus, used to return the remainder of a value. Then we have here equal to. Okay, so unlike C++ and Java, where we use the double equal to sign to test for equality, whether two values are equal. Okay, in VB, we use just one. Then for non-equality, not equal to, we use the less than and the greater than together. So as you can see demonstrated here, this is to check non-equality. Then we have greater than or less than, and we have greater than, we have less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Then we have other comparison operators. We have the is operator, the is not operator, and then the like operator. Now, what is the is operator used for? It's used to validate whether the two object references is mainly used for objects, okay? So two object references, the same value or object. If it is true, it returns true, otherwise it returns false, okay? So over here is going to look at this object one. Object one is object two. If this returns a true value, then that means that what? Object one has the same value or the same content as object two. Okay? Then it's not. It's not means that you are negating the first operator, which is the is, the earlier operator mentioned, which is is. And then finally, we have the lack or the like operator, which is used to check the pattern of expression. To check the pattern of expression of string variables. All right, so next week we'll go on with this, especially with the or operator, the logical operator, and then the bitwise, the bit shift operators. And we'll see how that works. And then next week too, we'll be having our first quiz, since we are meeting face to face. First quiz, which will be centered on both the first two lectures. Okay, so this video will be shared with you by this evening so that you can watch and then go through. And like I said, also get this document. Okay, that's the VB.NET for Professionals. Okay, before the handouts come, so that you can use it as reference. You can use it as reference. All right. Any question before we end the class? Any question? Any question?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yes, Ahmed.
Yes. We mentioned the operators, the comparison operator. You said
Yes.
that we use pseudo equality. I was wondering how do we distinguish assignment and then equality in this case?
Also, it is used, for instance, if you are doing your if-else statement, okay, you are doing an if statement or a loop, and you want to say that maybe A is equal to, or if A is equal to B,
Yeah.
do you get it? So you
Yeah.
can use it within that context.
Okay.
So if A is equal to B, then you are saying that, okay, if A is equal to B, you should perform this operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It makes sense. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So please go online, download this document. Like I said, it's at the moment we are looking at the syntax. Okay, so I want you to download it, vb.net notes for professionals. Just download it. You'll see some of these syntax that we've just talked about and how they are used, the assignment or the equal to sign. Okay, the comparison operators, that's the equality as we talked about. Then the not equal to. Okay. Then we have the less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than, equal to. So next week, we look at the logical and the bitwise operators. There are some computations, calculations that we need to understand. We'll talk about it next week when we meet face to face. And then we look at conditional statement. That's the if-else statement and the select case statement. All right. So in the absence of any question, we share a word of prayer, then close.